Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Jumping into another lesson here for linear relations. And this one, we're going to learn a new form of the equation called general form. So we know slope-intercept from the other day, couple days, 2 days. And then we're going to look at a new form of the equation. And then we'll have a little check for understanding today and on to the next one. So with that said, let's jump in. Here we are, page 571. And what we're looking at is general form. Okay, so this is just a new way to write an equation, a new way to write a linear relation, and we'll dive into this one. So we already know y equals mx plus b. That's slope-intercept form. We call it slope-intercept form because it tells me the slope and it tells me the y-intercept. Okay, so that's a very useful form of equation. Another form, okay, I could represent the same exact line in what we call general form. All right, so it's just I've rearranged the equation. I've moved some of the pieces around. It still will represent the same line. It just looks a bit different. So this one is ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. So it's moving it all to one side and setting it equal to 0. And there's a few more kind of characteristics in with that. So ultimately, general form doesn't actually tell us anything. Okay. Slope-intercept is an excellent form. It tells us the slope and it tells us the y-intercept. It gives us a lot of information. General form, it's kind of just a pretty form of the equation. It's a way for us to write our final answer in a certain way in this general form. So ultimately, it's just kind of pretty, right? Some things are pretty, some things are not. It is what it is.
You have a beautiful smile.
Thank you. You're not that handsome, but you look okay.
Wow, thanks.
A couple things with general form. It says all the terms are collected on the left side of the equation. I don't actually need that to be true. We can do left or right side. What that means is everything equal to 0. So if the equal 0 is over here or over here, that's fine to me. Okay. It is written as ax plus by plus c equals 0, where a, b, and c are integers. Okay. Meaning I cannot have any fractions there. So my coefficients on the x and y and then my constant cannot be integers. I have to get rid of the fractions somehow. So that's something we'll work on. And it says a is usually positive. Well, what we're going to do is a is always going to be positive. Okay, we're going to make sure a is positive. The general form allows us to write equations for, oblique lines, horizontal lines. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it might be referred to as standard form. This one, we call it general form. And like I said, it's just the pretty one. Okay, it's the one that looks nice. So it won't tell us anything, but maybe it's a way for us to write our final answer or whatever. Okay. Okay, quick cut to give myself a little bit more space for this question, and now we'll get started on it. Convert the following equations from slope y-intercept, so y equals mx plus b, to general form, which is the ax plus by plus c equals 0. Okay, and it says a, b, and c are integers. All right, well, what I need to do is move everything to one side of the equal sign, right? I've got 3 pieces. I got my equal sign, and I need all 3 of these pieces to be on one side. And this is where I say, I don't actually care if the equal sign is on the left or the right. We'll talk about it at the end. But if I look at this, I have 2 pieces over here, and I have 1 piece over here. So I'm going to move this y. I want to get rid of a positive y. I want to undo it. I want to move it to the other side. The opposite of a positive y would be to subtract y. Okay, y minus y, that equals 0. But if I subtract y on one side of the equation, I have to subtract y on the other. So it's like that equal sign is my barrier. What I do to one side, I do to the other. It's rearranging an equation using my algebra skills. So I get 0 equals 5x. And then I'm going to put the y in the middle, minus y minus 8. And there it is. Okay, so there are 3 things I have to check for. Okay, all 3 pieces on one side. It's equal to 0. Yep, that's good. I need all integer coefficients. Yeah, I'm good. 5, that's an integer, -1, -8. And then the last thing I need to make sure is the coefficient in front of x. That one needs to be positive, and it is. Okay, it's a positive 5. So I'm done. if you wanted to, equal to 0 could go on either side there, right? I can write this in the opposite order, okay? But it doesn't really matter, okay? All right, next one, y equals 2/3 x plus 7. All right, well, same situation. I'm going to move that y over. I'm going to say get rid of the y. What I do to one side, I do to the other. 0, y minus y is 0, equals 2/3 x minus y plus 7. All right, the three things I need to check for. Number 1, all my pieces are on the same side, set to equal 0. Yes. Number 2, I can't have any fractions. Well, this one is no good. I do have a fraction. I have that denominator of 3. All right, so to change this to general form, I got to make it look pretty. I got to get rid of the fractions. So what I look at is the denominator. I'm fine with a numerator. A numerator is just, like my integer. I need to get rid of this divide by 3. So you say, okay, well, the opposite of divide by 3 would be to multiply by 3. But the only way I'm allowed to do that is if I multiply all of the right side and all of the left side. So if I'm going to multiply by 3, I'm going to have to do it to both sides. Well, the left side's easy. 3 times 0, 0. Okay, 2/3 times 3, that was the whole point. It gets rid of the denominator of 3, and I just get left with my 2x. Okay, and what I'm doing here is the distributive property, right? Distribute, distribute, distribute. Minus 3y, negative y times 3 would be negative 3y, and plus 21. And then I look at this thing, I say, okay, it's all on one side. I have integer coefficients now, and my x has a positive coefficient. That thing is done. Fantastic. So I got rid of my, y equals mx plus b. Then I got rid of my fractions, and then I had a final answer. Okay, last one. Y equals negative 1/4 x plus 3/5. All right, same start. Okay, I could, right? I'm moving this y this way. I'm going to get rid of it because it's the one piece. I could also leave the y where it is and add 1/4 x to both sides, subtract 3/5 to both sides. I could move the two pieces. I just typically choose to move one piece. Okay, I move less things. So minus y, 0 equals negative 1/4 x minus y plus 3/5. All right, this one's a little harder. Okay, this one's a little harder. So what I'm going to do is get rid of my fractions. I have to get rid of my fractions. So here's where there is a quick way to do it. And if you want to try that quick way, you can go ahead. I'll do it the slow way. I'll say, okay, let's get rid of the divide by 4, right? Let's get rid of this fraction. This one I'll deal with later, but let's get rid of this divide by 4. The opposite of divide by 4 would be to multiply by 4. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So I'm going to end up distributing these in. 4 times 0, 0. That was easy. Negative x, or negative 1x. Oops, I want to be blue. Negative x, because I got rid of the 4, minus 4y, plus 12/5. Okay, that would be 3/5 times 4. Maybe I do that on my calculator, right? 3/5 times 4 equals 2.4. Math fraction, enter. 12/5. Okay, I can use my calculator to help me out. Then I'm close, right? I got rid of one of my fraction pieces, and then you say, okay, well, now let's get rid of that divide by 5. The opposite of divide by 5 would be multiply by 5. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. Okay, so I'll have to distribute into this side. 0, well, that's easy. 5 times 0 is 0. Negative 5x minus 20y plus 12. And I'm close to my answer. I'm one step away. I'm really doing a good job here. I have everything on one side. It's set to equal 0. Great. I have all integer coefficients. Great. Except the one in front of the x. This is the last little piece. The one in front of the x is supposed to be positive. So you say, okay, well, I need to change this so that it's a positive 5. And this is the great thing about general form is I can multiply anything left and right. And the fact that it's 0, it's really easy to multiply. So I know -5 times -1 would give me a positive, right? A negative times a negative. So that's what I'm going to do. I can multiply whatever I want, but if I do it to this side, I have to do it to this side as well. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Multiplying by -1. Multiplying by -1. 0 equals. Distributive property here. Rearrange, rearrange, rearrange. 5x plus 20y minus 12. And that is my general form. 5x plus 20y minus 12. Okay, so if I've got fractions to deal with, it's a lot harder, right? Maybe if I only have one fraction, it's a bit easier. If I don't have any fractions, it's a cakewalk and I love it. But converting to general form is it's just rearranging, right? It's just rearranging equations, skills that we have from math, skills that you even have from science, the ability to rearrange a formula. That's all it is, okay? So maybe I ask you a question just like this, but normally what it's going to be is at the end of a question, I say, oh, and also put it in general form, or give me your final answer in general form or something like that, okay? Next question here. It says determine the slope and y-intercept from this form, from ax plus by plus c. Well, I already said it. General form doesn't tell me anything. It is not useful at all. It's just pretty. It just looks nice. But if I want to use it, if I want it to tell me information, what I have to do is convert it to y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I look at the first one. It says determine the slope and y-intercept. I'm going back the other way. I want to get the y all on its own. All right, so I'm going to rearrange. I'm going to say, all right, let's move this plus 25. The opposite of plus 25, minus 25. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. 2x minus 5y equals negative 25. Great. And then you say, well, okay, let's continue to get rid of the stuff around the y. The opposite of positive 2x would be subtract 2x. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Negative 5y, don't forget that negative, equals negative 2x minus 25. And then finally I can say, okay, well, you have negative 5 times y divided by negative 5 to get rid of that. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So I would get y equals, and here's where I'm looking at a couple fractions. Negative 2 divided by negative 5, well, that'd be a fraction. It'd be 2/5. But a negative divided by negative means it's positive x. And then I'm looking at this one, negative 25 divided by negative 5. Oh, that's just an integer. It's positive 5. And there you have it. I have this in y equals mx plus b. So I can say your slope, 2/5, and your b value or your y-intercept, okay, b value equals 5. Okay, great. Y equals mx plus b, super useful, but sometimes it'll give me the information in a different way. Okay, next one, 6x plus 2y minus 15 equals 0. Do this one ahead of me. Rearrange it to y equals mx plus b, and then find your slope and y-intercept.
Many months later.
Okay, I've started b here, rearranging. I said, I got to get this y all on its own, so let's move everything away from the y. The opposite of subtract 15 would be add 15. I do that to both sides. Okay, get rid of the 6x. The opposite of positive 6x would be to subtract 6x. Do that to both sides. And now I'm here with the 2y equals negative 6x plus 15. The opposite of multiply by 2 would be divide by 2. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. And again, I'm dividing both pieces. So negative 6 divided by 2, that's negative 3x. And then plus 15 over 2, that's a fraction, so let's leave it as a fraction. There you go. Okay, slope, the coefficient on x, it's negative 3. Your y-intercept is 15/2, or as a decimal, that would be 7.5. Okay, so there you go. That's rearranging, right? And there's, different orders. Maybe I started by moving the 6x and then I moved the 15. Maybe you're looking at this and saying, well, why don't I just move the 2y over here and then I'm already separated. The y is all on its own. Yeah, you could do that as well. There's a lot of ways to rearrange. I'm not going to tell you one way is better than the other. It's kind of whatever feels right at the start. Whatever you want to start with, go for it, and then take care of the other pieces as you go. Okay, which of the following lines is or are, so maybe there's multiple, perpendicular to 4x minus 2y plus 9 is equal to 0. Okay, well, if I'm going to talk about perpendicular, I know parallel and perpendicular is all based on slope, right? So if I'm going to talk about parallel perpendicular, I should find the slope of this line. 4x minus 2y plus 9 equals 0. And then you think, okay, well, if I'm going to talk about slope, general form doesn't help me, but, well, slope-intercept form would. So I'm going to rearrange. I'm going to go minus 4x minus 4x. I'll start by moving that. Negative 2y plus 9 equals negative 4x. Now I'll move that 9 over. All right, get rid of that. Negative 2y equals negative 4x minus 9. And finally divide by negative 2. Okay, and that would be over the whole side. So y equals 2x. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is 2x plus 9 halves, or plus 4.5. Okay, so the slope of this thing is equal to 2. The slope perpendicular to this thing, oh, this goes back to last week, is the negative reciprocal. So the reciprocal means bottom goes to top, top goes to bottom. So it'd be 1/2, but it needs to be the negative of that. Okay, so what I'm looking for is if any of these other lines have a slope of negative 1/2, I know they're perpendicular. If they have any other slope, well, then I don't care about them and it doesn't matter. Okay, so try to squeeze it in. It's definitely not the most space, but I think we can figure it out. 1, 2, and 3, pause the video, try ahead of me, find those slopes. Then we can say which of these lines are perpendicular.
6 months later.
Okay, here I have everything filled out. So here's where you'll want to stop and take a look at the rest of this question. I went through and rearranged. It didn't show as much work, but you can see I just went step by step. I got a slope of negative 2. Well, that's not negative 1/2. I need my slope to be negative 1/2 in order to be perpendicular. No good. Go through the next one, rearrange. I get a slope of negative 1/2. Absolutely, that one's perpendicular. You know, take your time, go through my work to see if you got the same thing. And the last one, you start by rearranging, move over the negative 5, divide by 10. But then I always reduce fractions. 5/10, that's just 1/2. So my slope of negative 1/2, and I'm good to go. Your slopes 2 and 3 are perpendicular to the original. Okay, well, let's move on. Okay, I think we got a couple of questions left. Yeah, 2 more questions. Okay, write the equation of a line which is perpendicular to 2x plus 5y minus 7 equals 0 and is the same y-intercept of 2x plus y minus 6 equals 0. Answer in slope y-intercept form and in general form. So this is what we kind of go to in this unit, is finding equations of a certain line that match certain criteria, and then maybe I answer in slope y-intercept, maybe I answer in general form. What I'm going to say is I can't jump to general form. General form is I just rearrange so that that's my final answer. I'm going to use, for now, slope y-intercept form to find the equation, because that's the only one that really tells me things or I can actually answer based on. And with slope y-intercept form, I need 2 things. I need to find the slope, and I need to find the y-intercept. Okay, so somewhere in the question, it gives me the information about the slope and the y-intercept. So write the equation of a line which is perpendicular to this line, 2x plus 5y minus 7. So I'm going to look at that one, 2x plus 5y minus 7. I need to find the slope of that line, and then that'll tell me a perpendicular one. And then it has the same y-intercept as 2x plus y minus 6 equals 0. So if I find the y-intercept from that one, I know the y-intercept of my line. So it's this will tell me one piece, this will tell me one piece, and I go through from there. Okay, let's start rearranging. Move your x over, minus 2x. What I do to one side, I do to the other, minus 2x. 5y minus 7 equals 0. Get rid of that constant, move that over. I would add 7 to both sides. Oh, I don't know why I said 0. It's supposed to be negative 2x. 5y equals my negative 2x plus 7. And I will divide by 5. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So I get an equation of negative 2/5 x plus 7/5. Okay, what I care about is the slope. The slope of that thing is negative 2/5, but I actually don't want that slope. Okay, if it was parallel, if I was trying to find a slope parallel to this one, there it is. Since I want perpendicular, it's the negative reciprocal, which would be positive 5/2. Okay, great. I don't care about this 7/5. I don't care about the y-intercept of this one. All I cared about was finding the slope so that I could find my perpendicular slope. Okay, well now let's find our b value. So I go over to the other equation and I'm going to rearrange to find the y-intercept. So let's get rid of the 2x, minus 2x minus 2x. Y minus 6 equals negative 2x. Move that 6 over, add 6 to both sides. Y equals negative 2x plus 6. All right, well, that's rearranged to y equals mx plus b. Do not care. I do not care about the slope. Slope's negative 2, yeah, forget about it. What I care about is your b value of 6, your y-intercept of 6. So then from this, right, I can now say, all right, you have your slope, you have your y-intercept. My equation, y equals mx plus b. Y equals 5/2 x plus 6. That is the equation of my line. Okay. And that could be my answer. If it just said, find the equation of the line, I'm done. I found it. But it says, find it in slope-intercept and in general form. So what I then have to do is a little bit of rearranging. Okay. So I'll move the y over and we'll find it in the other form as well. 0 equals 5/2 x minus your y plus your 6. And then you say, okay, well, with putting something in general form, I had to make sure there was all on one side. Good. And now I have to get rid of any fractions. Okay, well, my fraction is a divide by 2. Denominator a 2, the opposite of divide by 2, multiply by 2. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. 0 equals 5x minus 2y plus 12. There you have it. That is my equation in general form. So this equation and this equation, that's the same line. If I looked at those equations on a graph, they'd be the same exact thing. This is the pretty version. I can write my final answer. This is the form that actually tells me some information. Okay, so that's a very common thing we're going to do is I want you to find the equation of a line, but to do it, you're going to have to find the slope from somewhere and the y-intercept from somewhere else. Okay, so if I ever ask for an equation in general form, just know I can't go straight to general form. I always have to go through something else first. General form is kind of an afterthought. It's the other forms that actually tell me information. Okay, final question, and then I'll let you do some homework. A student made the following statements about the line with equation 2y equals 5x plus 12. Statement 1, 2, and 3, where statement 1, the line has a slope of 5. Maybe. Okay. Statement 2, the line is parallel to 10x minus 5y plus 13 equals 0. Or in other words, they have the same slope. If these lines are parallel, it means they have the same slope. And statement 3, the line passes through negative 2, 1. All right, well, let's go through and saying which of these are true. Well, let's go one by one and prove it. Okay, the line has a slope of 5. Let's try that one. Okay, so this is for statement 1. Statement 1. If I'm going to determine the slope, I need to write it in y equals mx plus b. I need to rearrange. This is currently not in y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I need to divide by 2, rearrange y equals 5/2 x plus 6. Okay, my slope is 5/2, not 5. Right? So statement 1 is false. So I'm going to go to my answers. I'm going to cross off A where it says 1 and 2 because I know 1 is not true. I'm going to cross off B where it says 1 and 3 because I know that 1 is not true. Okay? And now I only have C and D left. Okay, so let's try statement 2. Statement 2 says the line is parallel to this one, or in other words, it has the same slope. Well, I know the slope of my line is 5/2. Let's try this new line, 10x minus 4y plus 13, and see if it has a slope of 5/2. So I'd rearrange minus 10x minus 10x. And maybe at the same time, I go minus 13, minus 13. Maybe that's something you start doing if you feel more comfortable. Minus 4y equals negative 10x minus 13. Just doing those two moves at the same time. You don't have to, but it's something you could look at. Divide by negative 4. Divide by negative 4. Y equals negative 10 divided by negative 4 is positive 5/2 if I reduce that fraction, plus 13/4. Well, I don't really care about the y-intercept. What I care about is, hey, your slope equals 5/2. Yeah, they are. So that's true. Okay. All right. So it could be C. And now what I need to check is statement 3. If statement 3 is true, then I know the answer is C. If statement 3 is false, then I know it's D, which is just anything else, right? None of the above. So statement 3 says the line passes through negative 2, 1. This is actually something you would have done in grade 9 quite a bit, okay? Which is to say, if I have this equation, 2y equals 5x plus 12. This is an x and a y, x of negative 2, y of 1. And if the line passes through that point, when I plug in those x and y's, I should get a true statement. Or it's like when we verify things, it's a way for us to verify. So we haven't really done this at the grade 10 level. This is something from grade 9. So I'm going to plug that in. The y value is 1. 2 times 1 equals 5 times negative 2 plus 12. And what I'm going to do is simplify the left side all the way down, simplify the right side all the way down, and see if I get the same thing on both sides. So 2 times 1, 2, equals 5 times negative 2 would be 10. And then I have to add 12 to that. So 2 is simplified. I can't do anything more. I just say 2 equals negative 10 plus 12 is 2. My left side is equal to my right side. So that's true. That point satisfies the equation. An x value of negative 2 gives me a y value of 1. That is true. So my answer is C. Okay. So statement 3, maybe not something we do a whole lot of, but 1 and 2 are some good stuff. Okay, that's it. Let's do some homework. 573, 1 odd, 2 odd, 3A, 4, 5. And you have a check for understanding today as well. And that wraps things up for today. Another video in the books. So now we have our slope-intercept form of a line, and now we have general form. And we're going to add one more form tomorrow. So get your homework done, do the check for understanding, quick questions on that one. And that's it, right? Make sure to ask some questions, set up a Google Meet so we can go through things one-on-one. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, tune in again, and that's it for me. Have a good day.